In 1999, a young woman vanished from the busy streets of Hong Kong. No body was found, no blood, no clear sign of where she'd gone. But a year later, when police stepped into an apartment to search it, they found it filled with Hello Kitty dolls, and inside one of them, there was something that never should have been there in the first place. It's a story that began with a simple act of revenge, but it ended with a haunted confession that would shock the entire world. This is Malaika's Case Walls. Today we're opening the file on one of the most disturbing crimes in Hong Kong's history. Born in 1976 in Shenzhen, Fan Man-Yee was abandoned as a child and she was sent to an all-girls orphanage. When she turned 15, she was told to leave the orphanage due to its age restrictions, and then she was homeless and alone. She fell into the dangerous corners of Hong Kong, becoming addicted to drugs and forced into street prostitution. By the age of 21, she was now working in a brothel named Romance Villa. In 1996, she married one of her clients and a fellow drug addict, Shi Yuan. The marriage was abusive, and neighbors often reported hearing a lot of fights and screams from their apartment building. Despite the hardships, she gave birth to her son in 1998 November, just a few months before something very cruel happened to her. But the birth of her son motivated her to try and do something better in life. She quit drugs and prostitution, finding work as a hostess at Empress Karaoke Club. And she also eventually left her violent husband. But leaving behind her old life came with a cost. Her income dropped significantly and she was struggling to support herself and her young son. Shan Man-Lok was a 33-year-old member of a very notorious Hong Kong gang. Trouble seemed to follow him from a very young age, and he had a reputation for violence. In early 1999, he was a frequent customer of Fan Man-Yee in the brothel where she had been working before she quit. That year, a small incident took place that would eventually lead to horror. She'd stolen his wallet, which had Hong Kong $4,000, and when he had discovered the theft, he demanded that she return the money. He also added an additional amount, $10,000. She returned the money that she'd taken earlier, like the $4,000, but she was struggling to come up with the $10,000. On 17th of March 1999, he decided to take matters into his own hands. He didn't act alone. Alongside him were 3 accomplices. A 14-year-old girl had been involved, who had been groomed by Shan, and her name was Ah Fong. 2 more men were involved too, both of them aged 21 and 26, and their nicknames were Gangster 1 and Gangster 2. Together, they abducted Fan from her flat, taking her to an apartment that had been rented by Shan himself. His original plan was to profit by pimping her out to other men, which was a brutal pretext to what would unfold later. Prior to the kidnapping, the other 2 men that had been involved worked at a retail store very close to the apartment that she was locked in. It gave them easier access to the apartment. She was imprisoned for nearly a month, and her life was starting to turn into a living nightmare. What began as a plan to punish her for her theft quickly spiraled into a nightmare of unimaginable cruelty. During her imprisonment, Fan was not only confined, but she was tortured and sexually assaulted too. She was beaten up, reportedly, many times. They used her body as a human punching bag, strunging her up sometimes. On one occasion, she was kicked in the head around 50 times. Metal bars were used to beat her up, and candle wax were poured on her legs and feet, leaving her unable to walk. They were so cruel that they even rubbed spices into her wounds to aggravate her pain. Her captors forced her to smile and say that she enjoyed the abuse. Any refusal was met with harsher punishment, escalating her pain day by day. It wasn't just physical pain at this point. It was psychological domination, an unending terror that was leaving her in a lot of traumatic shock. By the end of her captivity, the combination of physical torment, psychological terror, and sexual assault had ultimately led to her death. After Fan Man-Yee succumbed to the torture and trauma inflicted by Shan Man-Lok and his accomplices, they faced the problem of her body. Instead of calling the authorities, they dismembered her body. It was a calculated attempt to hide the crime. They cut her body into pieces to dispose of and conceal. Some of her bones and tissues were boiled to mask the evidence. Her skull was placed into a Hello Kitty mermaid doll which belonged to the 14-year-old, and the police had found this just like I mentioned earlier. This cruel act is what gave this case its name, the Hello Kitty murder. Some of her body parts were even discarded elsewhere, and some were found inside the apartment. Teeth, small bones, and tissues were found in various occasions. The combination of dismemberment, boiling, and hiding of a skull in a toy demonstrated the terrifying levels of premeditation and callousness. This ordeal did not end with Fan Man-Yee's death. For 14-year-old Ah Fong, the teenage accomplice, the memories of what happened had haunted her relentlessly. At a girls' reform school, she began experiencing nightmares of Fan's ghost every night, and it drove her to a nervous breakdown. With the help of a school social worker, she was persuaded to go and report the crime to the authorities. On May 24, 1999, 3 police officers from the police division were sent to the same apartment that Fan had been locked up in. What they found was horrifying yet minimal. Fan's skull, 1 tooth, and internal organs that were stored in plastic bags. Her other body parts were found in trash dumps. By the time of the arrest, Shan Man-Lok had been living with his wife and his newborn in another apartment. The SWAT officers raided their apartment in the early hours of 28 May 1999. His wife was initially suspected of involvement, but she was quickly released after there was no evidence of her connection to the crime. When this case reached the media, the same 21-year-old accomplice who had been nicknamed Gangster 1 had fled to China. But thankfully, he was caught by the police on 14 February 2000 due to irregularities in his passport, and he was listed the most wanted on the Interpol. Fan's skull was positively identified on 3rd June 1999 using a photo overlapping method at the Lockhart mortuary. It was a crucial piece of evidence that confirmed her identity and ensured that justice could move forward. Her skull was later moved to the Kowloon public mortuary. The trial for Fan Man-Yee's murder finally began on 20th October 2000. The courtroom had been packed with tension, reporters, and families, all waiting for justice. The 14-year-old girl, Ah Fong, had testified against the 3 men in exchange for immunity, revealing all the horrors that Fan had gone through in the apartment that she had been locked up in. On 7 December 2000, the jury, made up of 8 men and 1 woman, had reached a verdict. By a vote of 6-3, the 3 men, Shan Man-Lok, Gangster 1 and Gangster 2, had been convicted of manslaughter. The jury had concluded that the remains were insufficient to prove whether the men had tried to murder Fan or that she had died from an overdose, so they could not rule that the men had intended to kill her. However, they did determine that her death was a direct result of the suffering and pain that she had gone through by their hands. During the trial, Shan and Gangster 2 denied killing her, though neither denied dismembering her body. Fan's estranged husband and aunt also testified, painting a picture of Fan's life and the cruelty that she had endured. The trial had been emotionally charged, with Gangster 1's sister reportedly suffering a mental breakdown, and his brother had broken the court door in anger. Justice Peter Gwen, who had presided over the case, sentenced the trio to life imprisonment with the possibility of a parole, condemning their actions. Never in Hong Kong in recent years has a court heard of such cruelty, depravity, callousness, brutality, violence, and viciousness. These had been his words. Psychiatric reports from the Siu Lam Hospital and Castle Peak Hospital described the 3 men as remorseless, underscoring the severity of their crimes. They would not be eligible for parole for 20 years. As of today, Shan Man-Lok and Gangster 1 remain incarcerated at Stanley Prison. Shan attempted an appeal, but it was denied on 13 August 2007. Fan Man-Yee's skull was the only exhibit in this case, a chilling reminder of the cruelty that she had endured. On March 2004, her birth family had been notified that the skull would be returned and cremated on 26 March, finally giving Fan a measure of dignity. The apartment where the horrors had taken place no longer exists. In September 2012, the building was demolished, and in 2016, a hotel named Soravit was constructed on that site. 3 Buddha portraits were placed in the hotel as a quiet memorial to Fan, a subtle reminder of the lives affected by this horrifying crime. During the investigation earlier, a necklace that belonged to Fan had been found in the refrigerator in that apartment, and it was later handed over to her son, who would never know his mother. After her death, her son was raised by relatives who ensured that he grew up emotionally and physically despite the trauma. This case also left its mark on popular culture. Its shocking details inspired films like Human Pork Chop and There Is a Secret in My Soup, bringing the story to wider audiences and cementing its place in Hong Kong's true crime history. As for the perpetrators, their lives continued under the weight of their actions. Gangster 2, who had somehow managed to reduce his sentence from life in prison to 18 years on appeal, was released in April 2014. However, 8 years later, he was arrested once again in August 2022, this time for sexually assaulting a 10-year-old girl. He was sentenced to 12 months in prison. This is literally demonstrating the continuation of his criminal life. Fan Man-Yee's story is one of unimaginable pain and suffering, but also of strength, sacrifice, and love. She fought to protect her son and live a better life, even in the relentless cruelty by the people that were supposed to protect her, like the family that abandoned her and her husband who had abused her. Her courage deserves to be remembered and honored. The actions of Shan Man-Lok and his accomplices are nothing short of vicious, brutal, and cruel. It's a stark reminder of the darkness that is literally in some people around us. To Fan's son, we can only offer our sympathy and hope. Though he lost her far too soon, he still carries a part of her life and love with him. Her story reminds us of the importance of justice, compassion, and awareness. If I have pronounced any of the Japanese names wrong, I deeply apologize. And let's not remember her only for the horror that she had endured, but also for the life that she fought so hard to live.